Hello everyone! If you're new here, my name is Valerie. I make sewing tutorials and sewing patterns. In a previous video, we sewed a pair of trousers. If you haven't seen that video yet, you can watch it here. And I thought, why do not make a matching vest to go with them? I really love how these kinds of suits look. So I bought the same fabric I used for the trousers and got started on sewing the vest. And of course, I made a pattern for the vest, which you can find with the link in the video description. So without further ado, let's get into the tutorial.
For this vest, you'll need 1 meter of fabric, with a width of at least 1.5 meters. I'm using Sudan fabric. You'll also need 4 buttons and the pattern. As I mentioned earlier, you can download it through the link in the video description. First, measure the test square to make sure the pattern printed correctly. It should measure 5 by 5 centimeters. Trim along the edges, mark with scissors, and tape all the pages together. I pre-shrink the fabric beforehand to prevent the garment from shrinking later. Now, I'm cutting out all the pieces. I'll cut both the main pieces and the lining pieces from the same fabric, but you can use a different fabric for the lining if you prefer. When cutting the lining pieces, I recommend trimming the seam allowance in half along the outer edges, so we get a clean, beautiful roll at the edges later on. I've cut out all the pieces, and now we need to interface them. We'll fully interface the front pieces and partially interface the back piece. I'll show you what I mean. I cut the same pieces from interfacing and fused them using an iron through a pressing cloth, because interfacing can damage the iron. I've used all the pieces, the front pieces, and the back piece is only partially interfaced. I've reinforced the armholes, the neckline, and the hem, so they don't stretch out. If you're working with thin fabric, I recommend trimming the interfacing with small notches along the edges before fusing it, so it doesn't show through on the right side. My fabric is quite thick, so I don't need to do that. Now we'll sew the darts. I made slightly shaped darts because they provide a better fit through the back. I've pinned them, and now I'm going to stitch them. After sewing, press the darts. Next, we'll assemble the pieces. First, sew the front pieces together along these seams. Then, attach them to the back piece at the shoulder and side seams. The seam allowance is 7 millimeters. I've assembled all the pieces. Along the curved edges, I clipped the seam allowances so they would lay flat, and then I pressed all the seams open. In the pocket area, I added an extra piece of interfacing so the pocket won't stretch out. I'll mark the pocket placement on the pattern. Now let's move on to the welt pockets. For the pocket, I cut the following pieces: the welt, which I interfaced, folded in half, pressed, and marked, as well as the facing and the pocket lining. Match the marked lines and secure the welt in place. Stitch precisely from one corner to the other along the marked line. Then place the lining piece right sides together with the welt, position the facing on top, and pin everything in place. For convenience, I marked the stitching lines on both the facing and the lining, and stitch along those lines. Check that all your stitching lines match perfectly. Now we need to cut through the center. I'll mark the cutting lines for accuracy. Carefully cut down the middle Then cut small triangles at the ends, stopping about 1 mm before the corners. Make sure not to cut into the facing or the lining. Now turn everything right side out. I pin everything in place, and now I'm going to stitch, first securing one small triangle, then sewing along the lining to the other triangle and securing it as well. After stitching, press everything well. I place a piece of cardboard under the seam allowances to prevent them from imprinting on the right side. As you can see, it turns out very clean and neat. I assembled the lining the same way as the main pieces. I was just slightly short on fabric, so I added a small lining insert here. I also left a small opening at the hem. This is how I turn an opening. Now place the shell on the lining with the right sides together and stitch along this edge. Clip the seam allowances along the curves. Then, understitch along the lining side by pressing the seam allowances toward the lining and stitching close to the seam. We're almost done with our vest. All that's left is to finish the armholes and close the hem. Align the shoulder seams of the lining and the shell right sides together. Gradually pull the fabric through, pin it as you go, and then stitch around the entire armhole. Clip the seam allowances around the curve, press them toward the lining, and understitch. To close the hem, align the edges for the turn and opening right sides together. Pull the fabric through the opening, pin, and stitch. Finally, close the opening with blind stitches. Using a buttonhole foot, I made the buttonholes. The process is fairly straightforward, but if you'd like, I can film a separate video showing how to do it. I prefer opening the buttonholes with a razor blade because it feels more precise. Carefully cut the buttonholes open, making sure not to catch any threads. And that's it, the vest is complete.
I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, you can give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And you can also follow me on Instagram. I post a lot of interesting content there as well. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. I read everything and reply to all of them. I'll see you in the next videos. Bye!